Hello, welcome to the latest Katapult podcast. And with me at the start of this podcast is Dawn. Dawn, lovely to meet you. How have the last couple of weeks been at Katapult?
It's been an exciting couple of weeks, actually. We've had a few new announcements in the media. So we're working on the Gladiators experience, which is opening next year, which got put out into the media. And also we're about to, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have announced a collaboration we're doing with the Natural History Museum. So that's also an exciting development. And we've been busy prepping for the usual expos and exhibitions, which Orlando being the big one that we've attended.
Excellent. Okay, so before we go in and introduce our special guest onto the podcast, Dawn, which is our lovely Jules from Lego. A question for you: what have you learned most from working with Lego over the past few years that we've been doing things with them?
For us, like as being a Lego lover, as you can see from my collection here, and this is only a small collection of my Lego builds. There's a whole array of cabinets. Is that it's a personal interest as well as professional, and it's been amazing working with the Lego team. Just obviously the whole purpose and passion behind the brand, family-owned brand, the world's biggest toy company, and being able to really deliver experiences that align to their mission and vision and purpose. We've got this, children are our role models, and that's really front and center when we're working on projects together. And I love the fact that when we do things, it's, they have the line through of only the best is good enough. And that's really front and center when we're developing together and creating together. I think the way that we've collaborated with the Lego team, you couldn't work with a more wonderful, collaborative, design-led, creative thinking, innovative, attention to detail, considered, and really, like, when we're working together and getting feedback, it's such a rewarding process when you're going through that, and that purpose and why we're doing it is really aligned between the two teams. And I think there's a lot of shared values between Katapult and Lego. So again, I think there's a lot of synergy there that just naturally happens. And I think when we've collaborated on projects, Jules, and I'm recalling the project which we worked on during the pandemic, when the world was going crazy and everything was kind of uncertain, we had this beautiful project with Lego Dots, which we were delivering this new way of playing to Lego, globally rolling that project out. And it was just a really, I don't know, I think it like really helped during that time of like a lot of change in the world and working on that project. I think we both really look forward to our Thursday meeting, weekly calls, going through and delivering, and then seeing that impact and roll out. That was a really great collaboration.
So without further ado, let's welcome Jules from Lego onto the podcast. Jules, hello, lovely to have you on, and lovely to have a very passionate listener of the podcast to come on as a guest as well.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan since episode 1, as I shared with both of you. Yeah, because I have quite a commute every day. It's a lovely way to spend the time.
Fantastic. So for those out there that don't like a commute, you just need to stick on our podcast. I think that's vindication. Thank you. So Jules, tell us about your role. I was going to say your job title, but I don't think your job title encompasses everything that you seem to do. Tell us about your role, and also some recent projects that you've been working on that you can.
Yes, sure. So I am a senior design manager in the experience team leg of our team that works with the Legoland parks and hotels and a few water parks globally. So that's my role. The biggest project I've worked on was the Shanghai park that just launched this summer. So that started many, many years ago, before COVID, and then COVID hit and delayed everything. And something I work right now on that I can probably announce by the time this is released. So we're doing a little bit of, to anyone who's been to Billund in Denmark, there is the very first Legoland hotel that has a conference center section of it. And that was a lovely design in the 90s, but it needs a little bit of an update. Maybe it's 2000s, I don't know, but it definitely needs some modern love. And we're giving it a slight botanicals overlay, something that has to grow over time, fits well with the theme, but we're giving it a start, and we work with the most lovely receiving hotel site that is just like, let's try it out. And bring it on and see what we can do. So yeah, it has to be, we have a pretty fixed timeline to do something within this year, which is really fun, but also really fast paced, which I love.
Well, that sounds so wonderful. And a great use of the botanicals range.
Yes, definitely. So
Fantastic.
they've already started decorating the areas a little bit, and we just, dial it up a notch.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Oh, I can't wait to see it. That sounds great. Now, something we're going to do with you now, Jules, just to get to know you a little bit better, is a quick fire quiz. So if you're ready, we're going to get you to choose one or the other, starting with coaster or carousel.
Coaster.
Ooh, thrill seeker.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
do you want a reason as to why, or just an
Yeah,
answer?
yeah. What makes you go for coasters over carousels?
I get motion sickness if I'm in a carousel. But also, it's just the more exciting thing. Yes, I think carousels had a period in my life very early on. And then once I was tall enough for a coaster, which was early on in my life because I'm quite tall, I stuck with that. The faster, the better.
Fantastic. Excellent. That's great to hear. Okay, next one. Hot dog or hot coffee?
Hot dog, because I'm always hungry.
Yeah, me too. Do you go for the ketchup and mustard combo on top?
Yes, and mayonnaise. Sorry, I'm German. They don't have
Of
good
course.
taste in hot dogs. Yes.
Brilliant. We're learning so much and we've only done 2 questions. This is great. In terms of the theme park, would you visit alone or rather visit with family?
You know what? Alone. It's
Yeah,
probably an unpopular answer, but I get more out of it myself if I go alone.
definitely. That's a
Because I'm
great
a people
choice.
pleaser, and then I would not be happy at the end of the day if I
Yes.
went with a large group, because then it's like, all right, fine, let's do that instead.
Let's go back on the carousel one more
Exactly.
time. Excellent. Live show or character meet and greet?
Live show, because I'm older now. As a kid, meet and greet. Now I'm in the live show category.
Fantastic. Hide from the rain or embrace the poncho?
Embrace the poncho. I live in Denmark. You have to embrace
There's
it.
no option. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. We're in the same UK. Just get on with it. There's no other way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And finally, Lego dots or Lego botanicals?
Always Lego dots. Botanicals is
Always.
really fun, but Lego dots is just, it's another level of brilliance. So always Lego dots. Plus, that's how I got to meet Dawn.
Well, there we go. There we go.
Exactly.
That's justification. I think we'll take that. That's really good. Thanks, Jules. Great to know that you prefer hot dogs and visiting theme parks on your own. We'll know not to come up to you in a theme park next time we see you there. Just
Please
let it
do.
get on with it.
At least then I can be open.
So one of the discussions we want to do as part of the podcast is sort of, really look at the joy of play. And obviously with Lego, a big part of the experience, whether it's parks or at the Legoland Discovery Centres, is that ability to build an attraction that is fantastic for the family. And you guys seem to have just got such a great balance between pleasing the adults, but pleasing the kids as well, whether that's empowering children to be adults or whether that's empowering adults to be children, of which I am certainly one of them. But obviously, and I guess in your role, that does create some sort of challenges, but opportunities as well, particularly if you're working in different regions of the world. So I just wanted to ask you, what is the most common challenge in your role when it comes to that world building of parks and making sure that there's enough for families to visit?
I mean, a very practical challenge that we have with nearly anything is that we quite often, if it's something new, we do it for the first time. So then it's first like, do we think it's a good idea? Yes. Okay. How do we get everyone else in the organization also on board that this is a good idea? Because they're quite often just focused on their daily work. And then it's like, okay, theme parks for a second. It requires just a lot of selling in of ideas. So we wear the brand hats first to be like, is this a good choice? And if we're saying yes, then being like, okay, how can we make sure this definitely happens? And we do a lot of things that we've never done before. So there's always this level of like, was this a good idea or not? But yeah, if you want to see the largest minifigure ever in the world, you have to go to a Legoland park. That one is sitting in Shanghai. So that is something that is like, is this the first place to do it? And we're like, yes, it is, because where else will we do it? So that's fun challenge. I quite like that. Another one is that our play themes are ever evolving. So they change, and we cannot just constantly have a construction site in the park and be like, oh, sorry, we're just updating because we changed yet again. So we need to find an evergreen expression that allows for like these layers to come in and out. And that's not always easy because you never always know exactly what that expression is like. So we're also then trying to define something that might have to change again along the way. So yeah, definitely for anyone who's looking to build a theme park, choose something that is already finished and doesn't change again over time, because it is a nightmare at sometimes being like, yet again another color scheme. Lovely, yes. let us wrap our heads around it how to do it. But it's a fun challenge. So
And I guess something maybe that's underappreciated is just how many IPs or merchandise lines that are within the Lego group. And actually, it's not just about building a park within one universe. You're dealing with multiple verses in one step all the time. So what's that like to switch from one thing to another, which might be two completely contrasting IPs?
it's actually not that difficult because we see the park as a whole, so that you're like, you want to make sure everyone has a good time and everyone has an area that they feel like speaks the most to them. That might be multiple ones, but at least one should feel like, oh, okay, here they really got me and understood what I'm looking for. So can mean like, oh, we need a few more playgrounds. So where would they fit? Are they fit with this theme really well? Or they could also fit here. So it's actually quite useful to know the similarities and differences when it comes to like, where should something fit? But yeah, to also just, they all have kind of their unique flavor, and we just need to accept that we can't make every little capsule for everyone, because then it would lose also a little bit of its appeal and its role in the park. But yeah, it's funny when you have a meetings in the morning looking at like, fire hydrants and then like dragons in the afternoon. It's like, sure, yeah, they exist both in the same world, or my brain at least. Yes.
Well, they kind of go together.
Yeah,
If the
exactly.
dragon
Fire,
screeches
yeah.
too much fire, you're going to need something to put them out. That makes total sense. Just coming back to something you said about the giant minifigure, which is popped into my head around, there isn't an element of potentially scaring kids, or when things are upscaled, there is potential. Even with character meet and greets, I've seen my own children sort of run in the opposite direction because they're bigger than what they display on the television at home. So how do you deal with that? What is the right figure for a giant minifigure?
It's, that's an excellent question. And it is something that we look at a lot, especially because when we design our play sets for kids to play, for children to play at home, they are in control. So they are the ones, let's take a really easy example where you have heroes versus baddies and you play with that. But the next time you play with the same toy, you might choose to only play with the bad guys because it's maybe a little bit more exciting. And then the next time after, you might just want to stay in the completely safe zone. And that is all okay and great as long as the child chooses themselves in their own bedroom, and also the scale, you're so much bigger than the toy. Now, if we scale it up to a world, something that is slightly interesting, or the first level of scary that I'm comfortable with dealing with, if that's in a big size, that can have a complete different effect. So we do need to constantly question, is this a good choice for a theme park? Is this a good scene? What could it potentially trigger in guests? Is there any way we can use humor to make it a bit more lighthearted? But it is definitely not a plug and play of, let's take the toy and size it up and done deal. So there's a lot of considerations that go in. And with the big one in Shanghai, it was like, that one is stark and still and not moving the face. What if the eyes moved? And some were like, oh, that would be so cool. And some others, that would be really scary. So
Very scary, yes.
Yes. Apart from, technically probably quite challenging to make that look believable from all angles, but definitely a huge factor for us because our age group starts so young.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because a few weeks ago, I read some research around 2-year-olds and how they perceive the world. And something that 2-year-olds don't have, and this is globally, is dimension perception, as it's called. They don't understand that, say, for example, a slide at a playground, if it is far too big for them to actually go on, they won't see the challenge there. They won't see the issues that they might hurt themselves because they just see a slide. Likewise, the same child will probably have a toy dolls slide at home and they'll try and mount it and go down it because they just see a slide. So it's really fascinating to see how, even from an early age, we have to consider the design aspects of parks or playgrounds or attractions for smaller kids when actually they don't really understand the peril of going up a 20-foot playground ride at the same time. So really interesting to know your approach. Dawn, what's really interesting is, Lego are really amazing at sort of that world building.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's just through the IPs of the merchandise or through the lands that they have within their parks. What's some of the best environments that you've seen, the world building environment? Have you got any examples of some really special places that you've been?
Yeah, I have. And with this being launching towards Christmas, I thought start with a festive one and Lapland UK. So that I love for a few different reasons. One, because of the way that I love where that came from, as in a frustration from the owners who created that from visiting really terrible Christmas Santa experiences. So they said, we want to do this and we want to do it magical. And they've created, like, as soon as you arrive in the forest and then you end up going through into the experience, and you meet the elves, and the whole thing is so beautifully done, from a guest experience, from you stepping into their world, the pre that you get, the post experience that you get. Libby literally believes she went to Lapland to this day because I took her when she was about 3. It was so good that it was snowing that day when we took her as well in England, and it was just like, oh, this is all just landed perfectly. But you kind of feel like when you're there, you go through from area to area, and the way that they've considered and the beautiful execution of it all, it's just like you've never experienced before, and they've completely delivered on redefining what a Christmas experience should be, and not that, even the Santa moment that you get there is so beautifully delivered, and that moment that you get and you go through and past that is reindeer, and all of it is you traveling through forest, and it's authentically in a forest and set in a forest as well. Oh yeah, it's just beautiful. And there's like workshop moments where you get to build, you do the cooking, you get to build the wooden toy, and without giving hopefully a spoiler to people who have not done it, the wooden toy that you build, the wooden bear that you build, at the end of the experience, when you leave as a parent, they have this little hatch where they deliver you the gift that the child can't see, but it's the bear that they built, that they brought to life through their magic wish. And then on Christmas morning, that bear's sat there, and it's like, and they don't see that you got that from, and it's just so well done. So I massive applause to the team, the live actors, and everything that's part of that experience. It's just beautiful, and I think it delivers on that magic of childhood and also the parent wish fulfillment. I think that I probably enjoyed it just as much as Libby did, which is really important. So yeah, I still rave about that. And it's interesting, when I spoke to Libby about magical moments around Christmas, as well as going to these big experiences, do you know what, it's the things that you do at home that lead into that. Because her like really precious moments around Christmas and things is like every Christmas Eve we sit together, and we sit round as a family, and we all read a page from the night before Christmas and hold a candle and pass it round, and that to her is like a really magical moment. And if you can tie that as well as visiting experiences, but you can create those magic moments in your own home, that become really cemented memories. So I know we're talking about visiting attractions and experiences, but I also think there's a lot that we do as families and parents, and that we create those moments in our own homes that can really hold dear in a child's imagination, and that can be done with no budget and no cost. That's just us being creative and thinking of ways that those things happen, become tradition. I also think, and I'm gonna group 3 together, because I think that for me, and I was thinking around these 3 attractions, was that each of these offer a food and drink theme that makes you feel like you're in that place and you've transported yourself from our world and into that world. And the three that I will give of that is the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and obviously you're visiting Universal across 3 lands, across 3 parks, so Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley and the Ministry of Magic. But you can drink a butterbeer. So if you're transported to a place physically, the theming, the ride, the whole story, but you're tasting it and you're being there, like that signature moment of that butterbeer in that place, it just transports you even further into I'm there. I can not only feel it and absorb it and like get that tingling feeling, I can taste it and I can smell it, and I'm there. I'm like, I'm not in our world anymore, I'm in this world. And I think the other one that sits into that is Pandora at night, and again they've got a signature drink which is the night blossom, or the gin blossom if you're an adult, and you've got this moment when you've got that, and then the drumming and the sound and the that rock work, just absolutely stunning. It again transports you to that place as if you are actually there. And then Galaxy's Edge at Disney, where you're drinking your blue milk and you can't quite tell who's actors and who are really enthusiastic guests who are just in role and in play at that place, because they believe so much that they're there, and in that world they are in the moment. And those little moments that you see between the actors and the guests, and going through all that, you are really transported. So I think that for me it's really that transcend, that where you move from real world to that world and you feel like you've shifted. And I think when places do that, it's really interesting. Another one I will give an example of is Xcaret and Senses that we visited in Mexico, and very different to the others, but it's very active, fun. You're immersed in nature. You're going through those riverbeds, and you're going like the Xcaret is, I've got a great photo of Libby looking up because an iguana like pooed on Simon's head. But you are literally in nature and surrounded by it, but in an attraction, but it feels like you're not in an attraction because you're kind of like feeling the mud and the slime, and there's not that kind of cleanseless to it. It feels very authentic to place. And the Senses experience, it's just so exploratory and fun and playful, and you don't quite know what's going next, and you don't ever feel like you're in a queue line. You kind of go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and it kind of unveils itself like an onion of layers, and you just kind of what's behind this door, what am I going to discover over here? And I was just brilliant, and I just loved the exploration of it and the playfulness of that. So those are probably my kind of 3 big examples.
So yeah, Dawn, there's some really interesting examples there. And, when we talk about the joy of play, it's interesting. We're not just talking about children, are we? We're talking about adults, whether they are parents or grandparents, or they don't have kids at all. There's got to be an element of play for adults as well. And you've been to some really interesting examples of that adult sort of play. I'm just thinking of when you've been to Secret Cinema and places like that. What have those experiences been like?
I've done a couple of them, but Stranger Things is the one that I'll give the example of, where entering into that and feeling like, again, you've stepped into that world and the role, and you got a real sense of agency and purpose as you were going around, like the whole experience. And the ticket I'd bought, I was like a reporter, and you had different missions and there was different scenes, and things were you didn't quite know like how things were going to reveal themselves, and the conversations and the interactions you have with the actors. And then as you're playing the space, this is what I'd call it, you're kind of leading from, oh, I'm going to this, and then you speak to this person, you find this out, and then it leads to another thing. And I got so intimate. I went with my brother and my husband and my brother's wife, and my brother said that he enjoyed watching me of how much I got into it. But the good thing was you can go full on into it and really embrace it, or you can observe and still enjoy it for a different. So it's like you've got that choice of how much. So you're not have to, you can choose how much you lean in or how much you step back, but still enjoy it, whatever play type you are. I guess that's what I really enjoyed about it as well. I think when I left afterwards, somebody came up to me and went, oh, how did you get involved at being involved with it as an actor? And I was like, oh no, I wasn't. I was just a really enthusiastic guest. I was those people that were at Galaxy's Edge who got a bit too into it. But the casting of the actors was really important. They looked so real to the actual casts or the way that they play that out as a free play kind of experience that you're wandering around, and then the show element of it as well at the end. And again, each one I've done has been slightly different. But yeah, when I left, people thought that I was involved, which was funny because I really leaned in. But what I was saying was that the live actors were so well cast. They looked so like the actual actors from the film. Like, I was looking at Billy and going, that is actually Billy. And when I went into Scoops Ahoy and spoke to Dustin, and he called me a dumbass, I was like, oh my God, it looked so much like him. And I was so happy that he'd called me a dumbass. I was just like, they were so in character. Like, they didn't break character. And there was a scene where I was in between two areas, and Hopper came in and grabbed this kid, and I assume the kid was an actor, put him against the wall and was shouting at him. And I was literally me, Hopper, and this kid. There was no one else. It wasn't like, well, they're performing for a big crowd. I was literally like, oh, this is weird. What do I do? What is going on here? And so, yeah, the whole thing I really enjoyed. But I think what's interesting is that experience, they had an age bracket on it. So you had to be over 16 or 15, I believed, or there was a certain age bracket. So you could only really go as an adult. And I know obviously a lot of younger children, probably some people watch it under the threshold of the age range of Stranger Things, who wanted to attend. But what I find really interesting is that obviously Netflix House is open now in Philadelphia and then Dallas. They've all ages, and they've got the Wednesday Eve of Outcasts Festival of Evermore, and that's not got an age range. So anybody, is open to all family. And also their One Piece, which is part of their opening experiences, again, is open to all ages. So I love the fact that they've really tapped into the Netflix House offer is for families, and it can include that whole range. So I think that that's going to deliver really strongly to that family market, to be able to go in, step outside of yes, what you see on the screen, and then into that world. I think it's genius what they're doing, and taking control of creating their own houses where they can determine the fit out and those touring and that, and also be responsive to trends and change and things that hit, like K-pop Demon Hunters. I believe that hit so well that they even adjusted for the opening, for the first openings, that they included some of that. And I'm so excited to go and attend and visit the Netflix House. But I think the golf attraction, they've got part of it. They've got like This Is Cake Hole, where you get a certain lane open, apparently, if you can guess whether it's cake or not, and it'll open an extra bit of the course if you get it right. So that kind of playfulness, where they're taking those TV formats and doing that sort of stuff, so yeah, I just think it's really exciting what they've done there.
Fantastic. And Jules, that kind of brings us back to you around making those family attractions in the first place. You've got such a popularity when it comes to the product lines of Lego, but how do you translate that popularity into a family attraction and know that that's going to land well with the audience?
I guess you never really know how it lands, but I must say that also quite often we have not really envisioned a certain reaction, and then when you watch and you sit in the park and just watch families, and you get layers like, oh, they thought of this, and you're like, sure we did, yes, that was kind of coincidence, but I'm glad you enjoy it. No, but it is kind of challenging, because we want to firstly make sure that children feel like this is a park for them, and so we cannot just rely on legacy and nostalgic elements, because we don't want to make kids feel like they are excluded of understanding what the joke is about. But at the same time, a lot of the parents would love to see something that reminds them of their childhood. So it's like including everyone without making anyone feel excluded at the same time is not an easy one to strike. What we are aiming for is that we, for example, when we have our upscale Lego builds, that it is with the most current elements that you can find in the assortment, so that when kids, take a photo of something that they like, and they go home and then they look through their own Lego box with elements, and we're like, oh, I can actually rebuild this, and that we're not like, we used elements that are discontinued 20 years ago. Good luck, go on eBay and find that one. So, and also it should be built in a way that children can decode more or less, maybe a bit with the help of an adult, how to get there. That might not mean that it's always the most elaborate build, which then can frustrate, maybe not frustrate, but could be a disappointment to some of the really, really skilled, elaborate builders that are like, but why aren't you wowing us with the most amazing things? And it's like, well, we hope we are wowing you, but it should also really still inspire children to build and play. And we don't want to just show off. So I guess that's sort of the balance to strike. Of course, we have larger than life models that should impress people and be jaw dropping. But at the same time, we don't want to be like luck thinking or figuring out how to do this one. Like if someone goes home and feels inspired to build, that's the best thing. And ideally with elements that they have in their assortment. So yeah, that's a way. And then another thing that we can always consider are different heights. I'd love to place things on kids' heights that no adult even sees.
Mm.
I don't know if they would then necessarily share it with their parents, being like, oh, did you see this? But that's the kind of thing or Easter eggs that I love to do, where almost like kids are at the advantage of, I spotted this, you didn't, or I was able to see or reach for that, you couldn't because you were too tall or you didn't even know it was there. Those are the kind of moments that I love to create where it's really a theme park that thinks of everyone, including the youngest.
We love an Easter egg. We love an Easter egg at Catapult. Just
yes, yeah, and I guess we have less of these Easter eggs that I guess maybe we do, where you have to know the backstory of the designer because they had a passion for this type of flower. Don't know, but I like the ones that you as a guest can decode with a little bit of guessing around. So less than Easter eggs, they're probably more bespoke design choices, either that makes sense for a location or a local tale that we try to include a little bit and give a nod to, so that you're like, that's unexpected, but I kind of get what they're saying or doing here. And that's really sweet because I believe that's only in my park and not in another one somewhere else in the world. So we try to do bespoke elements of love to just have our guests be like, that was a really sweet idea.
Well, you're going to get people that have listened to the podcast just go through every minute detail of your parks now, trying to pick up on specific things that you might have done on purpose.
So I would look for graphics in particular. So things that the decorations on elements are quite often have a bespoke nod to something.
Okay. You're making me think now of what I've seen. Nothing comes to mind, so you've done a good job to hide it. But I think what's really interesting and sort of quite a timely thing is we've done some research into what we've called superfans, theme park superfans, predominantly looking at the US and thinking about trying to bust that myth or that stereotype that when you think of a theme park superfan, you think of someone that just wants to go on all the coasters and that's literally all they're there for, and they buy the big merchandise and then they leave and then they go to another park. We wanted to try and test that theory as to whether that's true. I'm really pleased to say that it's not true. And our research found that. And actually there's three key categories that came out of that research in terms of profiles of super fans. So there was what we called the supercharged, those people that will run to the coaster, try and get as far into that coaster line as possible, ride it about 3 times, then probably go home. That's fine. And there's a place in the world for those people. But there's also 2 other profiles. The first was what we've called the magic seeker. So these are the people or the guests that they want to see the enjoyment of other people that they're visiting more than themselves. They want to see their kids do something for the first time. Maybe they even want to take a grandparent on a coaster that they've never ridden before in their life. But they live through other people. And that's a wonderful and really interesting thing that we found that was not necessarily skewed towards people that were parents or not. It was all age brackets, which was really interesting. And the third one, which plays into this idea of Easter eggs and things that you might have hidden within the park, is what we've called the craft collective. The people that are so entranced with trying to find the design secrets of a park that, to be honest, they couldn't care less if they don't have to queue for a ride. They just want to look for things. They want to look for clues. Maybe an escape room would just be better for them. And they could go absolutely wild. But it's really interesting, those 3 audience profiles came out, and the biggest stats that I sort of took away from that was that 55% of respondents said their main motivation for visiting theme parks was to see their friends and family have fun. So there is kind of the ego has been pushed to one side, and yes, they love coasters, or yes, they love theme parks, but they want to go there for their own family's sake or their friendships, which is just a lovely, lovely thing to hear, that actually that stereotype isn't there. It's people that just want to have great times with their family. And Dawn, speaking of that, we are seeing more of a trend, aren't we, towards that sense of human connection, almost attractions that think about the group that visit and not just the individuals.
Yeah. And I think that whole family togetherness, which Lego deliver on so wonderfully, is creating those moments where you can connect as a family. And I'm thinking back to when we were doing the research, Jules, around Creative Club, and how through build moments at Lego, you can create moments where families connect, not just like, and we did some research where we were looking at, okay, how does a mom and a dad and a child play together when they're building Lego, and introduce some things and watched and observed, like what was the impact of that, and how can you create connection? So when we go into a park, parents aren't on the phone and kids are off. It's like, how do you engage the parents with what's happening? And those build moments was really interesting. If a child drew what it was that they were looking to build, the parents suddenly were able to see, okay, you're looking to do that. Oh, you're creating one of those, are you? Well, what about what colour? And suddenly this conversation started, whereas often the kids would be down building, the parents quite weren't sure what it is they were creating, so didn't really know. And actually some of the parents were a bit nervous because they didn't quite know where to start or what to do, so they didn't engage, and they sort of stepped back and said, this is. And as soon as you create those invitations to play amongst a family group, it just was wonderful to see those small invitations that allowed those. It suddenly opened up, and there were really tiny little things you can do. And I'm sure, Jules, you've got loads of examples of this, where those little invitations in parks, in design thinking, and how you generally just work and think at Lego, create those family togetherness and connection moments.
Yes, yeah, uh, we have lots of examples, but it actually really helps if you're introduced to building through what we call like a mentor, or if someone is like, oh, let's build together. And then because of that connection, the passion that someone shares with you, you get like, ignited with it as well, and be like, okay, yes, I love to do this with, and then, name close family member. So it's interesting to see in the markets where that might not have been the case, where the parents especially have not grown up with the Lego products around them as toys. And there's some comments that have surfaced with the Shanghai park, where it was actually quite funny that parents, they come to the theme park to be like, all right, kids, we're here for X amount of hours, so we got to visit all the lands. They entered this massive building that we have sitting right behind the largest minifigure Dada creative world, and in there kids entered and just wanted to build, and parents, that's really nice, but we're not just here for building, and that's all the kids wanted to do. And that's like such a lovely bad review for us to be like, yes, there is such value in also just seeing, because for the first time you probably it's the largest building space you've ever entered as a child, so that's impressive alone. But then you also see everyone else, all the other children around you build, and that just the fact that one could argue that's pretty low investment to focus on something like this, or is that the right thing to do for an attraction? Is that gonna wow people's minds? And it does, or it works really well. And that's just so lovely to see how some of the bad reviews we actually took as a big compliment, and we're like, that's we probably need to set expectations a bit better, what they might encounter, that children will maybe just want to build with their parents, because it's really lovely once you see that your parents are interested in something too and have a good time. That makes it so much more meaningful for children.
Wonderful. A lovely bad review. I love that phrase. I'm going to use that. Maybe on my kids. I don't know.
Maybe I'm just delusional. I don't want to see it as a bad review. It's like, this is great. This is exactly what we wanted.
The thing is that kids, however much you think how kids will play, and visit a place, they will go and they'll zone in and go towards an area, won't they, where they're like, this is what I want to do. So like, actually, as long as they've enjoyed that day and they've, that however they want to play and enjoy and explore, is it sometimes like their headspace or where they're at that day, or just, it's having that flexibility. And I think as parents that kids will just do kids, and you can't herd them. They often, you're happy when they're happy, right? So if they're happy, then that's a big tick. It was interesting what you said, Jules, around wanting to build with a person. And I can really resonate with that, because my husband has he is a huge Lego builder and collector, and is that a friend across the road, their daughter will only build Lego with Simon. Like that's what she says. She said she will only build with him. Like that she's got sets, and she said, I'm saving that because I'm going to go build it with Simon. So like that. It was interesting to hear from you that say that's a common thing, that people will find a person, their mentor, their person. And yeah, that was interesting.
Wonderful. And just before we wrap up then, and Dawn, will come to you first, as a final share on the podcast, what's the one thing you've learned since being in the industry?
The one thing that I've learned since being in this industry, I think for me, it's the iterative learning, that until you develop and see and learn and watch, it's kind of like it's constantly evolving and open to new ways of working and thinking and innovating, and that it doesn't stand still. And that actually also that don't try and overcomplicate when you're thinking about guest experience. It's always around simplification and making sure that the guest understands what it is, their role. And I think sometimes like thinking in the eyes of the guest and testing that and iterating that, and live and learn, like learn by doing. I think that's the way that this things has to happen. You have to get things out there and see them in context, and then iterate.
Fantastic. And Jules, what's the one thing that you've learned since being in the industry?
I've only learned things since, so it's difficult to pin down the one thing. Maybe it's like more an observation and an appreciation how everyone in this industry is so willing to share knowledge and is not so protective, maybe on like, oh, we're working on a specific project, not naming who exactly, but as soon as it comes to like, how do you deal with queue lines? What do you do to improve this pain point? Or I find it so lovely how open everyone is. And I see it also as a collective for this industry. If generally something gets removed, a pain point, there's no benefit if it's just in one side, right? Like you want to share the love and the learning and get the industry just in general up to be a better experience for guests. But I love how there's not a lot of competition, I feel, amongst, when you go to the conferences like IAPA or TA events, like I don't feel the competition, and I love it. So I think that's a really unique, so coming from the outside, a very unique feature, and that I think should be nurtured and maintained.
Fantastic. What a lovely thing. Feel the love, spread the love.
Exactly.
That's what we like to do. Excellent. Well, listen, thank you both for coming onto the podcast. It's been really, really interesting to hear your thoughts about how we can bring more joy into attractions. Thank you for joining us. And yet, Dawn, Jules, we'll speak to you soon.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.